Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video I am going to be 3D modeling this bench and assembling it in SOLIDWORKS. So you can see here for this bench that there are three different parts. There's a top, a side, and the legs. So in the assembled version of this, you can see the legs are here and here. So there's two of them. That does not mean we need to 3D model this twice. It just means in the assembly, we're going to be putting it in twice. And that's the same thing with the side. Okay, it goes here and then it goes over there. So there are several different ways that you could assemble this, but how I am going to show you how to do this is by using planes and actually mirroring a lot of these parts back and forth. So you can see up here I wrote tools to learn. You're going to be using planes within a part to take advantage or to use for your advantage, and you're also going to be mirroring these different parts. So first off, let's draw the leg. That's probably the most difficult one. And I say that because down here you can see there's this weird Hershey Kiss looking shape. And that shape is actually drawn with the spline tool. Okay, so I have the origin right here in the middle, meaning that you can draw one side and then you can kind of just mirror across if we have a construction line. So I'm going to pull this to my other screen. And in SOLIDWORKS, I'm going to start out by making a new part, and I'm going to make sure that my units are in IPS. So my computer defaults to IPS, so I'm good to go. If your computer is not in IPS, please change that now. That's down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And we are going to start sketching right on the front plane. So again, the origin is located at the top and in the middle. So I'm going to just start with my line tool, click on the origin, and I'm going to work to my left. So if you're just looking at that picture, you can kind of see that it just goes up like this, over, if I zoom out a little bit, goes straight down, and then over to right about here. Okay, now I'm going to hit escape. And this is kind of where I'm going to stop because that Hershey Kiss, the tip of it or the very top of it, goes to right about here. So let's get the line tool again, and this time I'm going to make it a construction line. I'm going to go straight down from my origin, and I'm just going to stop right about there and hit escape. Okay, so now before I go any further, adding dimensions or trying to do that spline, I'm going to just look at the rest of this because the spline tool is a very tricky tool to use. It's not necessarily a tool I like to use often because it's very hard to define, and I think you're going to see that. So before I even try to use the spline tool, I'm going to make sure everything else is in place. So first off, make sure your lines that are supposed to be horizontal or vertical are actually horizontal or vertical. You don't want any angled lines here. Okay, so horizontal, vertical. It looks like I'm good to go. Okay. The other thing that I would say is let's define a lot of this with dimensions before we draw that line. So let's go to our Smart Dimension tool, and you can see up at the top that it says from this piece all the way over to the other piece. And I'm going to bring that back over here. So that gap in here, it says it's 1 3/4 of an inch. Now, since we only drew half of it, we're going to be dividing that in half. If you can't do that in your head, you could just kind of think, as far as money, if you have $1.75, what is that going to be when you split it in half? Again, if you can't do that, you could just simply type it in. So 1.75/2 or divided by 2, and it will tell you that. So it should be 0.875. It rounds to 0.88. If you want to have it shown 3 decimal places, you can just click on this spot where it says 0.12. That's the unit precision, and you can change it to 3 decimal places. Then the next thing is this piece, and it says that is actually 2 3/4, 2.75. And it says from here all the way to its opposite side is 11 1/4. So let's just click on this and the construction line because that's right in the middle. And we're going to type in 11.25 divided by 2. Okay, again, that is a 3 decimal place number. So if you want to change its unit precision, you can. Now, if I zoom in a little bit further, this vertical line here is actually going to be 1 1/6 tall, or a 16th, 1 1/16. So you could simply type in 1 space 1/16, or you could type in 1.0625. But that should fully define this top. If it does not, that's probably because this line and this line are not straight across from one another or collinear. You can see that SolidWorks actually kind of just projected this coincident for me. So I'm guessing a lot of yours might look something like this. And if that's the case here, where you can kind of still move this up or down, you could simply just click on these two horizontal lines while holding in Shift, and you can hit collinear. Okay, so now they are going to be fully defined. Now, if I go down here to the bottom of this, it says for this little foot piece, that is 2 9/16. So I do not know that decimal place off the top of my head. So I am going to type in 2 space 9/16. And that is a 4 decimal place number. So if you want to change that unit precision, you can. And as far as the height goes, it says from this bottom line all the way up to the very top. Make sure you don't click here. You actually want the very, very, very top line. And this is 15 5/16. 15 space 5/16. And again, you can change your unit precision if you like. I forgot to do that with this one. Okay, so everything should be fully defined other than the construction line. And the construction line is stopping short of the very bottom. So I'm going to use that blue dot right there as kind of the top of that little Hershey kiss shape. So if you look at the top of that, it says from there down to the bottom is going to be 5. So if we make that 5, now we have our starting and stopping point for our spline tool. And that's good because the spline tool, again, is very difficult to use. It does not want to define itself. So if we look close at this little Hershey kiss shape, you can kind of see dimensions are just going to a random spot. Well, that random spot is actually going to be like a little anchor point. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to click right about here, and then somewhere up towards the top of it, and then the top again. So you're going to have basically 4 dots, 2 anchor points at the end, and then 2 in the middle. And hopefully we can define this. So get your spline tool, start at the bottom. Again, we're going to click right about here, so make sure you're not vertical, you're just in a little bit. And then you're kind of right about here, you're not directly underneath, you're just to the left of that tippy top point, and then up at the top. Okay, now it's going to ask you if you want to continue. If you hit escape, you should be able to get off of that. And now we have our 2 little anchor points or asterisks, our drawing points basically. So this is where we can kind of define some of those. So if we go from the bottom line up to this top point, it says that is 4. And it says from the bottom line to this other one, that is actually 2.5. And that measurement's off to the left side of the picture. So that's going to start to define this, but it doesn't fully define it. So you can also add in this point down here to this point. We're now going to be going sideways or horizontal. That has a measurement of 1. And it says from that bottom dot to this dot, oops, messed that up. Let's try that again. So from that bottom starting point to this top dot, that has a measurement of 2 9/16. Okay, so that should fully define it. But sometimes this will give you some errors and whatnot. If you have these measurements in and you have no clue what's going on, uh, I don't mind if you just delete this spline and you just have this on an angle here. So just get the line tool and just draw from there to there. I would be fine with that. because the spline tool is very annoying. You could have everything perfect of what you think, and it just does not work out for you. So it did work out for me. I have everything fully defined. So I'm going to kind of just get off of my dimension tool, click and hold way out here to select everything, and I'll get my mirror entities. And it should mirror right across that construction line. Now I'll go to the Features tab and hit Extrude. And if you look up at the little note here on this document, it says all material is 1 1/16 thick. So since this would be made out of wood, everything is 1 1/16 thick. That's why you just have flat pictures here. You don't have like a three-dimensional view or a multi-view. So we're going to do 1 1/16. That's 1.0625. It doesn't matter if you go forward or backward. Green check, and we'll change our material to pine. That should be a default for you. If it's not, of course, you can go into Edit Material, scroll all the way to the bottom, and that would be the wood. So here's our leg. Let's hit File, Save As. And you're going to find a folder for that. That's going to be our bench assembly folder. You can see I already have them drawn. So I'm just going to make a new folder inside of that. But you don't have to do that, obviously. And we're going to name this leg. Okay. You can keep that open or you can close it out, but we're going to be moving ahead here to the top. So I'm going to start a new part. And if you see, the top has the origin dead center of this entire thing. So since this is the top piece, let's actually draw on the top plane. And underneath the rectangle tool, let's get the center rectangle. Make sure you're in IPS, and we'll click right here in the middle and draw out. And that way, the center of this rectangle is dead center on the origin. Got my Smart Dimension tool, and this piece is 11 1/4, 11.25. Down across the bottom is 49 1/2. And you could try to draw these little rectangles in here now, but I think with these construction lines, sometimes that does get confusing. So you could do it if you'd like to just keep it all in one sketch, that's fine. I'm actually going to extrude this so you are not confused by those construction lines. So extruding it, again, it is 1 1/16, so 1.0625. And now I'm going to sketch back up on top. I'll hit Control 8 to move around. And that is a lot cleaner to look at now. You don't have those construction lines in your way. So let's get the corner rectangle this time. And I'll just draw a little rectangle here. You can draw one right underneath it. And I'm only going to worry about this side because I'll just draw a construction line here and mirror across. So in from the end, it says it is 7 1/4. So I'm going to hit Escape, and I'm going to make sure that this line and this line, so hold in Shift and select those two lines, are collinear, and they're also equal. Okay, and I'll make these two small lines, so the top and this top, I'll make them equal, not collinear, just equal. Okay, so that way when I move them over, these lines are collinear as well. Now, if you're looking at that picture, you're kind of wondering, where's the rest of the measurements? Keep in mind that this is a part that goes into an assembly. So if you look at that assembly, you can see those little holes that are right there, those rectangle holes, it's actually where the leg pops up through. So the measurements that are up here on top of the leg are actually the measurements we're going to need to make those holes in the top piece. So in from the outside to the first edge, it's going to be 2, and then the length of one of those holes, 2 1/3, space and or 2 3/4, and then the space in between is 1 3/4, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to be using these measurements if you're wondering where I'm getting these numbers. The smart dimension from the end to here, that's going to be 2. This is 2.75. Space in between these two, put that over here. That's going to be 1.75. And again, it doesn't have the width here. Keep in mind, the leg is actually popping up through this top. So if all material is 1 1/16 thick, that means this piece is actually the thickness of that leg. So if I click on that line, we're going to make this 1.0625. So that again is the thickness of the leg. So that's now fully defined. So let's just get the line tool and make a construction line from our origin straight up to the top. We'll select those two rectangles, mirror entities, mirror about, and select your construction line, green check, and you should have this to the other side. Now we can simply just use the cut extrude or extruded cut, and we'll set this to cut through all. Green check. Okay. Now we can change our material once again to pine, and we can save this. This is going to be your top. We can make another part. And this time I'm going to select the front. And it says the origin is on that top left corner of our side piece. So if you look at this side piece here, origin's right there. We're just going to draw straight across, down a little bit on an angle, across, up on an angle, and back up. I'm going to reposition a little bit so my origin's over here on the left side. Draw straight over, down, angle, straight across, up on an angle, and back up. Okay. Now I'm going to select both of my angle pieces and I'll set them to equal. Make sure they are not perpendicular. Okay. If you see perpendicular here, you're going to want to delete that, or if you see it out there, sometimes SOLIDWORKS will default to that. I'm going to select these two little lines at the very end, and I'll make those equal to one another. So now this thing should be pretty symmetrical from one side to another. As you can see, it mirrors itself as I move this around. Now we can start to dimension. So across the entire top of this is 49.5. It says from the top to the bottom is 4.5. The angle piece, so if you just select the angle and move straight down, is 4. And if I select the angle again and move over to the left, it says this is 3 1/8. So that's going to be 3.125. Okay, so that should be fully defined since they're all equal. Now we'll go to the Features tab and extrude. Again, this is 1 1/16 thick, so 1.0625. And set our material to pine. And we can save this as our side. So now we have all three parts drawn. We can go ahead and actually make an assembly. So file new and assembly. And now that we're out of part files, we want to make sure that we are in IPS once again. And when you start an assembly, it's obviously going to ask you, what do you want to place in here? If you have your documents open, it's going to have them over here on the side. If you do not have your documents open, you're going to have to hit Browse. Okay. We can bring in all three at one time. That's perfectly fine. So just select all three, hold in Shift and select them. You just want all three highlighted. Then hit Open. And it's going to ask you to place them in. So you can just kind of click. There you go. Okay. Now, since this was placed in alphabetical, our leg was the very first one, and you can see if I try to move this, it says the component is fixed, it cannot be moved. You can also see it has an F over here on the left side, meaning it's fixed. The other ones have that minus sign, so they're underdefined, so they still have the 6 degrees of freedom. They can move around any which way. Okay. If you notice, our top is actually drawn in the correct view or correct plane. It's actually kind of going in the right orientation. It doesn't have to be rotated or anything. Same thing with the side. And that's because I had you draw those in the correct plane or on the correct plane. We drew the leg at the very beginning and we started on the front plane. So I did that just to specifically show you if you have that assembly and you can actually think ahead and draw on the correct plane at the very beginning, that's one less step you have to do later. You don't have to rotate your pieces. Right now our leg is oriented the wrong way. So I actually have to make this float. So I'm going to right click and hit float. And now I have to rotate this. So if I would have drawn this in a different plane, I would not have to do this step. Okay, so instead of actually rotating that one right away and trying to mate it off of other things, I'm just going to work off my top. So let's just right click on that top and fix that. Now our leg will actually rotate according to the top. So let's do that. We know these pieces. So I got my mate tool. We know these little pieces kind of pop up through here. So that means the top of this is going to be flush with the top of your top. You can see it kind of just went inside. If yours is flipped upside down for some reason, you're going to have to select the mate alignment, but it should be like this if you followed with me as far as drawing. We'll hit the green check. Then I'm going to make this outside of the top, that long straight outside. If I rotate around, I'm going to select this piece right here, this outside. And you can see it kind of wants to make those flush right away. We actually want to do the mate alignment and flip-flop those. So you see how it rotated it the other way. You want to make sure that these pieces are facing the same direction that the holes would be. So it's kind of going inside the board. Then we'll hit the green check. And we want this thing to slide over in here. So that means we're going to select this inside piece. If I rotate around, it's not going to touch that wall, actually going to touch this wall. Okay, then I can hit the green check. So now that's fully defined. Perfect, it's in there. So let's put this side piece on. So I'll select the top of that side piece and the very top of the top piece. Now that's confusing. And now they're flush. So let's pull this back out. We'll click on the side of the top, rotate around. It's actually going to be touching this inside. Green check. And then the ends are going to be even. Green check. Okay, so we have the sides on, we have our legs on. You could insert components and do the exact same thing again, but that's a lot of clicking. We had to, obviously add 3 mates to this, 3 mates to this. So that's with the green checks and everything and all the mates, you're talking about close to 25 clicks. What we can do is just kind of mirror these across. So this piece actually has a plane going right through the middle of it, as you can see. So I just hit the drop down, and you can see there's a front plane going right smack dab through the middle of that. So I'm going to use that plane to my advantage. I'm going to go up to linear component pattern, and when you're in assembly, they kind of take a lot of the features and just condense them underneath this. So linear component pattern, and I see mirror components. And I already had that plane selected. If you did not, they always have this piece right here. And sometimes it's compressed like this. So if you just decompress it, then you want to find your top part, hit the drop down, and I selected my front plane. So that's the plane going through the middle. And the components I want to pattern is just going to be this, not the leg yet, just this piece, the side, and hit the green check. And you can see it mirrors it right over there. So once again, since the origin was right in the middle, now the right plane going this direction, that's how I can move my leg over here. So linear component pattern, mirror, I have that plane selected and I'm going to select my leg, green check, and now that's perfect in there. And it's fully defined. So if I actually right click on the top and hit float, this entire thing should move together, and it does. So hopefully you learned how to look off of a sketch, kind of use different sketches that interact with one another to 3D model different parts, and then you learned how you can use planes, already existing planes in your parts to mirror, and maybe you even learned about thinking ahead enough to your assembly, even though you might have a whole bunch of parts to draw first, thinking ahead enough that you can draw your parts in the correct orientation at the very beginning so you don't have to rotate them around later on.